I was standing in my kitchen reheating leftover pasta when my phone buzzed with a notification that didn't feel normal. It wasn't from a contact, just an unknown number, no name, no context, just a single message that said, "You should see what your fiancé was doing on his bachelor trip." Before I could even process the words, a video file started downloading automatically. My stomach flipped, and for a second, my brain whispered, maybe it's a prank, maybe someone's messing with me. But the moment the thumbnail loaded the blurred neon lights of a nightclub and my fiancé's unmistakable silhouette, something inside my chest tightened like a fist. I tapped play with a shaking thumb, and the world around me seemed to tilt. Because there he was, my fiancé, my soon-to-be husband, leaning in and kissing a woman I had never seen before. Not a friendly peck, not a drunken accident, a slow, deliberate kiss that showed he wasn't resisting, wasn't confused, wasn't loyal. The phone nearly slipped out of my hand as the audio filled the room. EDM, thudding, drunken laughs, his voice saying, "Don't post that, seriously." Just before the video cut, my lungs forgot how to work. I replayed it once, twice, 5 times, searching for anything that might make it make sense. A look of hesitation, a push away, a sign he was drugged or forced. But no, the more I watched, the clearer it became. He knew exactly what he was doing. The worst part wasn't the kiss, it was how comfortable he looked, how familiar he seemed with betrayal, like this wasn't the first time. My instinct was to call him, demand an explanation, scream, cry, accuse, but when I pressed his contact, it went straight to voicemail. Again. And again, as if my pain meant nothing against whatever fun he was having in the airport lounge on his way home. I didn't even realize my maid of honor, Celine, had walked into the apartment until she gasped. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I turned the screen toward her, and the moment she saw him in that woman's arms, her expression twisted into rage. The protective, feral kind only a best friend can summon. "Tell me this is edited," I whispered, though even saying it felt like a lie. Celine shook her head slowly, jaw tight, eyes darkening. "Who sent this?" "I don't know." I opened the message again, staring at the anonymous number. No name, no profile picture, no anything. Just a final line beneath the video. There's more where that came from. A chill rippled down my spine. More. What does more even look like? Him holding someone's hand, him waking up in someone else's hotel bed, him laughing about how he fooled me, the pasta in the microwave beeped, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My entire future, the wedding plans, the vows, the life we'd been building, felt like they were cracking open, revealing something rotten inside. Celine placed a hand on my back, steady but trembling with her own anger. "What are you going to do?" My throat tightened as I looked down at the paused frame, his face buried in that woman's neck, smiling. And instead of collapsing, instead of sobbing, instead of falling apart like the naive version of me would have done a year ago, something sharp lit inside my chest. Not sadness, not grief, something darker, colder, clearer. "I don't know yet," I said, voice low, steadying, "but I'm not letting him walk into our wedding pretending everything is perfect." Celine nodded like she already knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The first spark. The first fracture, the starting point of something bigger than either of us understood in that moment. Because that was the night I realized I wasn't going to be the broken bride. I was going to be the one holding the match. He walked through the arrivals gate the next afternoon with that same boyish grin he always used after a trip, the one that used to make my heart soften instantly. But this time, when his arms wrapped around me, all I felt was the stiff, unfamiliar weight of a lie pressing between us. His cologne, the one I bought him, smelled different on him now, like it didn't belong to me anymore. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "God, I missed you." And the words slid over my skin like oil, too smooth, too practiced, too easy. I smiled back, the kind of practiced smile that hides a storm, and said, "Tell me everything. How was the trip?" His eyes flickered, just a tiny stutter, but I saw it. A glitch? Ugh. Same old. Just the guys, bars, nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. If only he knew the video I watched over and over until it burned itself into my eyelids. I kept my voice light, teasing, "Really? That's all?" He nodded quickly, a little too quickly, the way a kid lies about finishing homework. Behind him, his friends were rolling their luggage out of the terminal, and that's when I noticed it. 3 of them exchanged a look, a quiet, sharp, nervous look, the kind that says, "We know something she doesn't." Except I did know. Maybe not the whole story yet, but enough to recognize guilt when I saw it. Later at dinner, the tension grew thicker than the steam rising from our plates. His best man kept checking his phone, avoiding eye contact with me. Another one laughed way too loudly whenever someone mentioned the wild nights. My fiancé kept steering the conversation away every time it got close to something real. Yeah, but anyway, how's work? Let's not bore her with bachelor stuff. Come on, we already told those stories. It was like watching a group of bad actors trying to perform a script they forgot to rehearse. I stirred my drink slowly, pretending to be distracted while studying them. Every shrug, every gulp, every shoulder nudge, it all screamed, cover up. I asked casually, "Did you guys ever end up going to that rooftop club, the one with the neon signs?" His fork paused midair. It was almost microscopic, but still there. Then, no. We couldn't get in. Too crowded. The others nodded in stiff unison like malfunctioning bobbleheads. But I remembered the neon lights in the video, the exact shade of electric blue glowing on his skin when he leaned in to kiss her. "Strange," I murmured, swirling the ice in my glass. "Someone posted a story from there." He shrugged. "Probably another night." We didn't go, but his voice cracked just enough to slice through my patience. I didn't argue. Not yet. Let him lie. Let him stack the lies one on top of another until the whole thing collapsed on its own weight. That night, back home, I did something I never thought I would. I stalked his friend's social media like a detective piecing together a crime scene. Tagged photos, comments, disappearing stories, cross-checking timestamps. And that's when the entire web of lies unraveled in my hands. One guy posted a blurry clip from the same rooftop club, same neon lights, same music I heard in the cheating video. Another posted champagne glasses lined up on a hotel balcony at the exact time my fiancé told me they were at a casual dinner. A third posted a caption, "Bachelor trip level, legendary." I clicked through every detail like a person possessed. Every inconsistency, every timestamp mismatch, every forced smile he gave me earlier, it all piled up until the truth became undeniable. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't drunken confusion. This was a coordinated, cowardly cover-up, and he thought I would never notice. By the time I closed my laptop, my hands were buzzing with adrenaline. He had lied directly to my face over breakfast, over dinner, in my arms, in my home, while the truth sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. And as I crawled into bed beside him, pretending to be tired, pretending to be clueless, pretending to still be his dumb, I felt something settle deep inside me. Not despair, not heartbreak, something colder, sharper, more precise. Not only would I get the full truth, I would make sure everyone else got it too. Sleep refused to come that night. I lay beside him, listening to the soft, steady rhythm of his breathing, the breathing of a man who believed his secrets were safe, who believed I was still blind, who believed the wedding he betrayed was still waiting for him, like some prize he deserved. Every inhale he took felt like it scraped against the raw edges inside my chest. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows shifted and stretched, until 2 a.m. arrived like a whisper and brought something with it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. One short vibration, a notification from the same unknown number. For a moment, I just stared at the screen glowing in the dark, afraid of what new reality it might show me. Then anger pushed my hand forward. I swiped the message open, and my breath stopped. "You need to see the rest." He wasn't honest about anything. Attached were 6 photos and 2 videos. My pulse thundered in my ears as I tapped the first image. It showed him in the hallway of a hotel, his arms slung comfortably around the woman from the club. She was laughing, leaning into him, her hand sliding across his chest. He wasn't pulling away. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't confused. He looked happy, relaxed, like this was natural. My vision blurred for a second, not from tears, but from the sheer force of disbelief grinding against rage. The next photo showed them standing outside a hotel room door, his hand on the small of her back as she unlocked it. Another showed them inside a bar, seated close, her legs crossed toward him, his smile soft and intimate, a smile I thought belonged to me. I opened the first video. He was in the same hotel room now, sitting on the edge of the bed with a drink in his hand. The woman straddled his lap, and he said, laughing, I have a wedding next week. She giggled, brushing it off. Then don't tell me your name. He tilted his head back and laughed harder, like the idea of hiding me was nothing. My hand clamped over my mouth to keep from making a sound. I played the second video, shorter, shakier. It showed them kissing again, deeper, this time his hands running up her sides. At the end, he whispered something against her neck, something quiet, something intimate, something I never wanted to hear replayed in my mind. I saved everything. Every file, every second. Then I backed them up on my laptop, on a hidden drive, on a cloud account he didn't know I had. If he thought I would crumble, if he thought I would confront him crying, if he thought he could lie his way into absolution, he didn't know me at all. But the real question clawed at me. Who was sending this? Someone from the trip, a hotel worker, a stranger who recognized him, someone who pitied me. I typed back, who are you? Why are you sending this to me? The reply came instantly, like they were waiting. Someone who thinks you deserve the truth before your wedding. No name, no explanation. Just that, a shiver crawled up my arms. Not fear, anticipation, like the universe itself was handing me ammunition and saying, go on, use it. I stared at his sleeping form beside me, the rise and fall of his chest so steady, so peaceful, so undeserved. My reflection in the dark window looked like someone else, someone colder, someone who had crossed the line between heartbreak and calculation. I whispered to myself, barely audible, I won't confront you. Not yet. Because confrontation was too small, too private, too merciful. No, if there was going to be an ending to this story, it would not happen in our bedroom. It would happen somewhere grander, somewhere he could not escape. Somewhere everyone would see exactly who he truly was. And as I lay back against the pillow, awake until the sky began to lighten, one thought crystallized inside me, sharp and perfect. The wedding won't end in vows. It'll end in truth. The moment we landed at the resort for our destination wedding, everything felt surreal. Not because I was excited, but because everyone else was. Guests were buzzing with champagne energy, hugging us, congratulating us, taking photos as if this week was the beginning of some perfect fairy tale. Meanwhile, I walked through it all feeling like I was moving underwater, the weight of the secrets I carried pressing against my ribs with every forced smile. He held my hand the entire shuttle ride, fingers laced with mine, thumb brushing my skin like he was the world's most devoted fiancé, and the absurdity of it almost made me laugh. I kept wondering if he sensed it, the quiet shift, the invisible crackling in the air. If he felt the way I stared at him, not with love, but with a calculating stillness. If he felt the truth crawling closer. At the welcome dinner, he was glowing, telling stories, making everyone laugh, and I studied him the way a scientist studies a dangerous experiment. Every gesture looked practiced now. Every affectionate touch felt hollow. When his arm slid around my waist for a photo, his hand lingered, like he wanted reassurance or forgiveness, but I was no longer offering either. He clinked his glass against mine and whispered, "Only 3 days until you're stuck with me forever." I smiled back, slow and calm, and said, "Forever? Yeah." He didn't hear the sharpness tucked under the word, but Celine did. She shot me a look from across the table, part worry, part readiness, like she was waiting for me to pull the pin on a grenade. Later that night, I slipped away from the crowd. I needed air, space, silence, anything that wasn't filled with laughter I couldn't trust. I wandered down to the ceremony site, an open terrace overlooking the ocean, candles arranged in elegant spirals, white orchids twisted into arches. The waves crashed softly below, and the breeze carried salt and warmth. It should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a stage waiting for a performance. I walked to the altar where we were supposed to say our vows, and the irony hit me so hard I almost laughed out loud. Vows, promises, honesty, loyalty, words he had already broken before they were even spoken. Then a strange, sharp thought slid into my mind, the kind that stops you cold because it feels too powerful, too daring, too possible. Weddings already had photographers, videographers, live stream setups for distant guests, all the infrastructure for a broadcast. And if a wedding could be broadcast, then so could a truth. I stepped closer to the spot where the cameras would be placed, imagining every angle, every frame, every reaction. The idea unfurled inside me like a match touching gasoline. A live stream, not of vows, but of betrayal. A reveal so public he wouldn't have space to lie, twist the story, or bury it. A moment he couldn't escape. My pulse picked up. Not fear, energy, purpose. I whispered to myself, this could work. This could actually work. When I returned to the group, my fiancé wrapped his arm around me again, pulling me into him. I let my head rest lightly on his shoulder, and he sighed with contentment, unaware that I was already imagining the expression he'd wear when everything fell apart. The guests kept celebrating around us, dancing, drinking, planning excursions, while I silently rewrote the ending of our wedding week. He thought he was walking toward a ceremony, but I was walking toward a reckoning. And the ocean, the candles, the tropical sky, all of it would witness what he did. If he'd stolen my fairy tale, then I'd steal his illusion. The morning after the welcome dinner, the resort felt almost too bright sunlight bouncing off the pool, guests floating on inflatable flamingos, laughter spilling across the courtyard. It was the kind of place where people came to celebrate love, which made the darkness I carried feel even sharper, like a secret blade tucked under silk. I spotted Celine in the lobby, clutching an iced coffee the way a general clutches battle plans. The moment our eyes met, she arched a brow. You ready? I nodded, and we slipped away from the crowd like two thieves sneaking off to plot. We ended up in my suite with the blinds half drawn, the room quiet enough that the hum of the air conditioner sounded tense. I opened my laptop, pulled up the videos, the photos, the messages. Celine watched everything with her jaw clenched so tight the muscles in her cheek trembled. He didn't just cheat, she muttered under her breath. He choreographed it. When the hotel hallway photo appeared, she actually cursed out loud. Oh, he thinks he's slick. He thinks you're stupid. He thinks I cut in softly. He thinks he's safe. We exchanged a look, the kind that holds both fury and possibility, and that was all it took for us to shift from heartbreak to strategy. We started building a timeline. Every video timestamp, every location, every inconsistency in his stories, every lie he told with a straight face. By the time we finished, the truth formed a perfect, ugly arc, undeniable, airtight. I stared at it, my chest tightening with the weight of it, but also relaxing with a strange, fierce clarity. I'm not confronting him privately, I said. That's too small. Celine didn't even blink. Good. I wasn't going to let you. Then she leaned in, lowering her voice. So, what's the big plan? That was when I told her the live stream idea, the reveal, the public truth. The ceremony turned into a confession booth he couldn't escape. Her eyes widened, then sparkled like someone had handed her the plot twist of the century. Okay, I'm obsessed, and I'm also terrified, but mostly obsessed. She paced for a second, thinking aloud. We need someone who can handle the technical side, someone discreet, someone who won't accidentally blow our cover. And then she snapped her fingers. Your cousin Adrian, he literally builds streaming rigs for gaming conventions. I blinked. Adrian, the one who once coded his way out of a parking ticket. Exactly. He'll do this with popcorn. We called him up, told him to come to my suite. He walked in wearing sunglasses indoors, sipping a coconut drink, totally in vacation mode, until we showed him the evidence. The sunglasses came off. Fast. Oh, hell no, he muttered. We're not letting this man walk around thinking he's the protagonist. He pulled out his laptop immediately, fingers flying. The venue is already set up for guest streaming, right? That means multiple camera feeds, strong upload bandwidth. This is actually too easy. He looked up with a grin that was all mischief and vengeance. Tell me what moment you want the world to see, and I'll make sure it happens. For the first time since receiving that anonymous message, I felt something warm push through the cracks in my chest support. Real support. Not the kind that pats your back and says, "You'll be okay," but the kind that sharpens its teeth beside you. We made a code phrase, a simple, harmless sentence, I would say, during the ceremony when I was ready for Adrian to switch the feed. We rehearsed it like we were preparing for a heist. I practiced my speech in the mirror, calm, steady, devastating. No screaming, no tears. Just truth delivered with surgical precision. At one point, fatigue hit me, and I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Do you think I'm going too far?" I whispered. Celine knelt in front of me, placing her hands on mine. "He humiliated you in private." "You're not humiliating him, you're revealing him." Adrian nodded. "Actions have consequences. You're just broadcasting them." Their words settled in me like armor. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into resolve, something sturdier, something that didn't shake. Because now I wasn't facing this alone. I had allies, a team, a plan. And as the sun dipped lower outside the window, turning the ocean gold, I realized something. This wasn't a wedding week anymore. This was a countdown, and he had no idea what was coming. The night before, the wedding always looks magical in movies. Soft lights, happy tears, that floating sense of anticipation. But in reality, my reality, the air felt thick, heavy, almost electric, like the whole universe was holding its breath. Guests were scattered around the resort, dancing at the beach party, sipping cocktails by the pool, taking photos under string lights. Everyone was glowing with that pre-wedding excitement. Everyone except me. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, wearing a bride's smile, answering questions, accepting congratulations, pretending I wasn't counting minutes until the reveal that would shatter everything. When I finally slipped away to my suite, I barely had time to breathe before a knock echoed through the door, soft, hesitant, familiar. I opened it and found him standing there, hands in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched, like a boy about to confess something. Except he wasn't confessing anything. He never would have. "Can I come in?" he asked, voice warm, hopeful. I stepped aside and let him enter. He walked in slowly, looking around as if the room held answers. Then he turned to me with this strange tenderness in his eyes, the kind that used to make my chest flutter, but now just felt like a mask he didn't deserve to wear. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, sinking onto the couch. "About us. About tomorrow. I want you to know how lucky I feel." His voice cracked a little, a calculated crack, practiced vulnerability, and it almost made me laugh. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know I'm not perfect. I know I get stupid sometimes. But this wedding, building a life with you, I can't tell you how much it means to me." For a moment, I just stared at him, studying the shape of his face, the way he was choosing all the right words, but none of the truthful ones. It hit me then he wasn't guilty because he cheated. He was guilty because he thought he'd gotten away with it. I softened my expression, sinking into the seat beside him, letting my voice come out gentle. "You've been quiet about the trip," I murmured. "Did anything happen that you want to tell me?" He froze for half a second, then smiled. A shallow smile meant to erase suspicion. Nothing happened. "I swear, just guy stuff. You know how they are. Lie. Smooth and warm, sliding across the room like smoke." I nodded, slowly, pretending to accept the answer, pretending I didn't have videos of him kissing another woman in a hotel room. He reached for my hand, squeezed it, and whispered, "Tomorrow's going to be perfect." I leaned my head onto his shoulder, the shoulder he let another woman rest her lips against and let silence stretch between us. Thick and suffocating. He mistook it for emotion. "I can't wait to see you walk down the aisle," he added softly. A strange calm washed over me, cold and precise. "Me too," I whispered, though what I meant was, "I can't wait to watch your face when the truth hits you under the spotlight." After he left, closing the door gently behind him, the room felt hollow, all quiet corners and tense shadows. My wedding dress hung by the window, glowing under the lamplight like some symbol of purity I no longer believed in. I stood there staring at it, the lace, the delicate embroidery, the softness of the fabric. It should have represented love. Instead, it represented the final costume I'd wear before tearing down the lie we'd built. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything, the videos, the lies, the rehearsed vow that would never be spoken. I lay awake listening to the distant crash of waves, the faint music from the beach party, the steady hum of the air conditioning. Time felt elastic, stretching and snapping again. Hours passed like seconds. Seconds passed like hours. As dawn crept into the room, coloring the sky a muted pink, I sat up slowly, my chest rising with a deep, steady breath. This was it. No more planning, no more rehearsing, no more wondering. The wedding day had arrived, but it wouldn't end with rings. It would end with truth and a reckoning he never saw coming. The morning of the wedding felt like stepping into a dream I didn't belong in. Sunlight spilling across the resort grounds, florists rushing with bouquets, staff weaving through guests with trays of mimosas, everyone radiating that warm, giddy anticipation. Meanwhile, inside my chest, everything was cold and sharp, like a glass heart cracking with every breath. I walked toward the ceremony terrace, the place where I was supposed to promise forever, and instead of nerves, I felt this strange hum under my skin, the kind that comes right before something explosive. When I arrived, the Livestream crew was already setting up tripods, light panels, microphones. They thought they were preparing for a picture-perfect wedding broadcast, not a public execution of the truth. I stood there watching them adjust angles, test audio, reposition cables, and every detail just solidified how perfectly this stage was built for what I was about to do. Adrian arrived a moment later, sunglasses on, expression sharp with focus. He moved around the equipment like he'd been born in a control booth, checking wires, testing feeds, adjusting bit rates. "The system's clean," he whispered, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. "Cameras 1, 2, and 3 are linked. Upload speed is insane here, which means your message?" He tapped his laptop with a wicked little grin. "Crystal clear, worldwide. Instant." A rush of adrenaline slid down my spine, cold and electric. I nodded, trying to quiet the pounding in my ribs. He lowered his voice further. "The clips are loaded. All you have to do is say the phrase. Once those words leave your mouth, the switch flips automatically." I repeated the code phrase under my breath, a simple, harmless sentence woven into my vows, and felt the weight of it settle behind my tongue like a hidden blade. Staff nearby kept smiling at me, telling me how beautiful the setup looked, how magical the day felt, how lucky I was. I thanked them softly, each polite smile feeling like another mask I had to stretch across my face. The truth sat in my pocket on a small drive, humming like it wanted to leap out and expose him right then and there. But not yet. Not until everything was in place. Not until every guest, every camera, every pair of eyes was turned toward the altar. Then my phone buzzed a message from him. "Can't wait to marry you. I love you." My breath caught in my throat, not because of affection, but because of the sheer audacity of the words. He was somewhere on the resort grounds right now, eating breakfast, laughing with his groomsmen, thinking he was about to enter the happiest day of his life, and he had no idea that the ground beneath him was already splitting open. I typed a simple reply, "Almost ready," the sweetest lie I'd ever told. When he appeared at the venue for the rehearsal walkthrough, he looked disgustingly handsome in his tailored suit. Guests turned to admire him. Photographers snapped candid shots, and he played the perfect groom, charming, confident, glowing. I watched him from across the terrace, my expression soft, my mind miles away, building the moment he would break. He walked over, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Everything looks amazing. I can't believe we pulled this off." I smiled because he was right. We had pulled something off. just not the thing he imagined. The officiant waved us over to practice the aisle pacing. My heels clicked steadily over the wooden deck as I imagined the real moment walking toward him in my wedding gown, veil floating behind me, cameras capturing every second. But instead of vows, the truth would erupt on the screens behind us. Instead of applause, there would be gasps. Instead of forever, there would be fallout. As we wrapped up the final technical checks, Adrian approached one last time. "Everything's armed," he murmured. "Once you say it, there's no undoing it." I took a slow breath. Good. And I meant it. Because this wasn't sabotage. This wasn't revenge for the sake of revenge. This was justice. This was clarity. This was the truth, wearing a wedding dress. Walking away, I glanced at the ocean, the waves rolling in calm, steady rhythms, and whispered to myself, "It's time." The stage was ready. The cameras were ready. The world, unknowingly, was ready. And soon, he wouldn't be. The ceremony began under a sky so blue, it almost felt cruel, like the universe was mocking me with perfection while I prepared to dismantle the biggest lie of my life. Guests filled the terrace in shimmering rows, their voices hushed with anticipation, their cameras out, their smiles wide. Music drifted through the warm air, soft, romantic, the kind that would normally make a bride's chest flutter, but all it did was sharpen the edges of my resolve. I stood just out of sight behind the floral arch, my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm as my wedding dress settled around me like armor. When the officiant nodded and the first notes of my processional song began, I took a single breath and stepped forward. Every head turned. Every phone lifted. My fiancé's face lit up like I was the sun rising just for him. He looked overwhelmed, emotional, in love, and I felt nothing but an icy calm as I walked toward him. The dress rustled softly, the orchids swayed in the breeze, the ocean glittered behind us. Everything looked like a fairy tale. Everything except the truth sitting in my chest, like a loaded trigger. When I reached him, he took my hands gently, squeezing them as if promising safety, even though he was the danger I was walking into. "You look unbelievable," he whispered, eyes glassy. I smiled, a slow, serene smile I'd practiced in the mirror. The kind of smile a woman wears when she knows what's coming, but he doesn't. The officiant began the ceremony, her voice warm and steady. She spoke about love, about partnership, about trust, and each word felt like a knife sliding across a lie. My fiancé kept glancing at me with soft awe, brushing his thumb over my knuckles, completely unaware that the life he thought he was stepping into had already dissolved beneath him. Guests dabbed at tears, filmed us, whispered they're perfect together. A line I would later savor for its irony. Then the moment arrived, the exchange of vows. He went first. He pulled out a handwritten note, hands trembling slightly, maybe from nerves, maybe from guilt. He talked about fate, about how he knew I was the one, about how he couldn't wait to build a future based on honesty. The crowd sighed with adoration. I felt my jaw tighten, but on the outside I looked like a bride, drinking in every word. When he finished, he kissed the back of my hand, proud of himself, convinced he had just sealed a lifetime. Then it was my turn. I looked at him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch into something heavy, something that made the hairs on his arms rise. My voice came out soft, steady. "Before I give my vows," I paused, watching confusion flicker in his eyes. "I want to share something with the people we love." In the crowd, Adrian straightened slightly. Celine exhaled. Somewhere behind the camera rig, a red light blinked alive. I continued, my tone calm, almost tender. "There's a phrase that's guided me through planning this wedding, a reminder that truth always reveals itself even when someone tries to bury it." And then, with a small breath, I said the code phrase, the sentence that would flip the world inside out. So today, I choose honesty over illusion. A beat of silence. Then another. Then the screens behind us flickered. My fiancé's face paled. The audience gasped as the first video appeared. The neon-lit nightclub. The woman wrapped around him, his lips pressed against hers. The audio spilled out across the ceremony, laughter, music, his voice saying, "Don't post that. Seriously? He spun toward the screen, eyes wide, throat working as he tried to speak, but no sound came out. Shock rippled through the guests like a wave, hands flying to mouths, heads whipping between him and the footage. Then the second clip played. The hotel hallway, his arm around her waist, her unlocking the door. A few guests actually stood up in disbelief. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" Someone else muttered, "Oh my God." My ex-fiancé stepped toward me, desperate, whispering fiercely, "Stop this. Please. We can talk. Just stop the video." His voice cracked with panic. But I didn't move. I didn't blink. I simply watched him the same way he watched that woman in the bar, unbothered and entertained. The final clip played him on the hotel bed with her straddling him, the muffled words, the kiss, the betrayal crystallized in HD. When the screen cut back to the live feed of our ceremony, his face looked hollow, shaken, terrified. I lifted the microphone with a steady hand. "I won't be marrying you," I said softly, my voice carrying through the terrace, through the cameras, through the live stream watched by thousands. "This is who you chose to be. And today, I choose myself." Gasps, whispers, phones recording, the perfect wedding shattered in one breath. And he had never looked smaller. The moment the final clip ended, the entire ceremony froze, as if time itself inhaled sharply and forgot how to exhale. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint ocean wind brushing past the microphone, carrying the weight of everything that had just happened. Then, like a dam, bursting chaos erupted. Guests gasped, chairs scraped against the floor, whispers turned into stunned murmurs. Cameras, not the professional ones, but guests' phones rose instinctively, capturing my ex-fiancé's face as the truth settled over him like a collapsing roof. But the real storm wasn't in front of me. It was online. Because the live stream didn't just stay within the circle of invited guests. As soon as the first cheating clip flashed across the screen, notifications spread like wildfire. Viewers joined the stream by the dozens, then the hundreds, then the thousands, flooding in from TikTok shares, group chats, private messages that said, "You have to see this wedding." Comments exploded across the feed, faster than my mind could process. "Oh my God, what a monster. Run, girl, run. Is this real? I need popcorn." Justice for the bride. Emojis flew in, waves, flames, broken hearts, clapping hands. It was like watching a digital crowd rise to its feet. My ex-fiancé finally looked at the cameras, really looked, and his expression twisted into raw panic. His perfect groom facade dissolved entirely. His voice came out hoarse, cracking. "Turn it off, Adrian, whoever, turn it off." He stumbled toward the live stream crew, grabbing at cables like a drowning man clawing at air. Adrian calmly stepped back, hands raised, playing innocent, even as the world watched the groom unravel. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The cameras shifted back to me, zooming in on my expression, steady, composed. Heartbreak turned to clarity. And the live stream chat went wild again. Queen behavior. This is how you expose a liar. Bride of the century. Somewhere behind me, a guest actually clapped a single sharp clap and then stopped, embarrassed, but it didn't matter. The energy had shifted completely. I wasn't the humiliated bride anymore. I was the woman delivering justice in real time. My ex-fiancé stumbled back toward me, shoulders shaking. "Please," he whispered, voice breaking apart. "Please don't do this. We can talk. I messed up, okay? It wasn't what you think." His words trembled, but they still carried that old familiarity, the tone he used whenever he tried to minimize something awful. But this time, there was no space for negotiations. I stepped back from him, my dress rustling softly like a cold breeze. "You didn't mess up," I said quietly. "You chose this. You lied. And you thought I'd marry you anyway." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The live stream chat exploded again. "Say it louder. Drag him respectfully. He deserves this." He looked around desperately, searching for an ally, someone to defend him, someone to blame me instead. but all he found were horrified stares. His groomsmen refused to meet his eyes. His best man looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. One aunt whispered, "I knew something was off about him." Even his mother, standing in the front row, pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, her face ghost pale. Still, the live stream kept climbing. 10,000 viewers, 20, 50 comments flying so fast the screen flickered. It wasn't just a breakup anymore. It had become a global spectacle. And he knew it. His voice cracked into a plea. "Please, please stop the stream. I'm begging you." But I just lifted the microphone again, my voice calm, almost gentle, the opposite of the chaos around us. "I'm not ruining our wedding," I said. "Your choices did that. I'm just showing the truth." In that moment, his knees actually buckled. He collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands as cameras rolled, as thousands watched, as everything he tried to hide finally swallowed him whole. The officiant whispered to an assistant. Guests shifted uncomfortably, but no one interrupted. No one tried to silence me. No one told me to calm down. Because somewhere deep in their expressions, I could see it, they understood. They knew this wasn't a tantrum. It was a reckoning. And as I stepped away from the altar, lifting my dress so it wouldn't drag on the wooden deck, the live stream followed me, comments roaring with support, solidarity, rage on my behalf. I walked with my spine straight, my breathing steady, my heart unburdened. The wedding had fallen apart spectacularly, but for the first time in days, maybe even weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. He had lied in private, but the truth, I had delivered it in public. And the world was listening. For a moment, it felt like the entire ceremony was suspended in this strange, vibrating silence, the kind that comes after an explosion when everyone is still trying to understand the damage. My ex-fiancé sat slumped in a chair, hands buried in his face, shoulders shaking as the live stream continued to tick upward. Tens of thousands of people now watching his downfall in real time. I stood a few feet away, breathing slowly, my heart beating with a steady, controlled rhythm that surprised even me. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't crying. I felt anchored, like I had finally stepped into the version of myself I was always supposed to be. Then his mother broke the silence. She stormed forward, heels clicking sharply against the wooden deck, her face a blend of horror and fury as she pointed a trembling finger at me. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice rising above the murmurs of the crowd. "How dare you humiliate my son like this on the internet, in front of our families, during what was supposed to be a sacred day?" Her voice cracked at the end, dramatic and ringing, and several guests turned their heads, startled. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I just looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw not a mother defending her child, but a woman terrified of the consequences hitting too close to home. Before I could respond, she took another step toward me, her voice tightening. "You should have spoken to him privately. You should have handled this like an adult instead of," I cut in softly, calmly. "Did you know?" The words dropped between us with the weight of a stone. Her breath hitched. Her eyes flickered. And for a split second, just one, her mask cracked. I caught it. Everyone caught it. That hesitation, that flicker of recognition, it said everything. She tried to recover, stammering, "W what? Of course not. He would never." But then the next video clip automatically replayed on the screens behind us, the hotel hallway, his arm around the woman's waist, and the truth she tried to deny glowed in bright, undeniable HD. Guests shifted. Some gasped softly. Some whispered. She knew. His mother's face drained of color. His father stepped forward then, his jaw clenched, eyes full of something colder, disappointment, maybe even disgust. "Enough," he muttered to her. "Stop yelling. This isn't her fault." She spun toward him, furious. "How can you say that she just destroyed our son's life?" He shot back, "No, he did that." His voice was low, but it cut through the ceremony like a blade. She opened her mouth to argue again, but he grabbed her arm and pulled her back, shaking his head in a way that said he was done making excuses. Meanwhile, the live stream chat was exploding. The mom knew, oh my God. Gaslighting runs in the family, I see. Dad is the only sane one here. This is better than reality TV. My ex-fiancé finally lifted his head, eyes red, face blotchy, desperation spilling out of him in uneven breaths. "Mom, please stop," he whispered, voice cracking. "You're making it worse?" She kept babbling in circles, insisting he didn't mean it, that everyone makes mistakes, that boys will be boys. But the more she defended him, the more the crowd recoiled. My family, on the other hand, moved closer to me like an unspoken wall of protection. My mother's hand touched the small of my back, soft, steady, while my father stood with arms crossed, glaring at my ex-fiancé with a rage he rarely showed. The contrast between the families was stark. His side was unraveling. Mine was aligning around me like a fortress. Then something unexpected happened. One of his groomsmen, the quiet one, the one who avoided eye contact the night he returned, stepped forward and said under his breath, "She's right." He cheated. The entire terrace turned toward him. His mother's jaw dropped. My ex-fiancé whipped around, eyes blazing with betrayal. "Dude, what the hell?" But the groomsman kept speaking, voice trembling. "I'm not lying for you anymore. I'm done." And just like that, the final thread snapped. My ex-fiancé's mother faltered backward. His father shook his head, defeated. Guests stared at the groom as if seeing him for the first time. Phones continued recording, live stream comments flying faster than the screen could refresh. Some viewers even began taking sides, forming mini debates mid-broadcast. It was surreal. A wedding turned courtroom, a groom turned defendant, a bride turned judge. Through it all, I stayed quiet, still, centered. Because the truth didn't need me to shout. It was loud enough on its own. And as I stood there, watching his world collapse in front of me, I realized something powerful, something liberating. He wasn't the victim. He wasn't misunderstood. He wasn't confused or overwhelmed or lost. He was simply exposed. And the whole world could finally see it. The moment the ceremony finally disintegrated into scattered, stunned clusters of guests, he grabbed my wrist, not hard, but desperate, and whispered, "Please just come with me. Please, just 5 minutes off camera." His voice was shredded, barely holding itself together. For one brief second, I saw the panic in his eyes. Not heartbreak, not remorse, panic. Panic at being exposed. Panic at losing control of the story. Panic that the world now knew exactly who he was. I let him lead me into one of the private lounge rooms inside the resort, a quiet space with soft lighting, plush chairs, and a balcony overlooking the ocean. The door closed behind us with a heavy thud that sounded almost ceremonial, like a final drum before the truth bared its teeth. He turned to me, face streaked, eyes swollen, hair messy like he'd been clawing at it. "Why? Why would you do this?" He choked out, "Why would you humiliate me like that in front of everyone, in front of thousands online?" His voice cracked and broke apart, pieces of it sharp with shock. But what stunned me was the shape of his question, not, "I'm sorry I cheated," not, "I hurt you," but "Why did you expose me?" It was so perfectly him, so perfectly selfish. I took a slow breath. "Humiliate you? You humiliated yourself the second you walked into a hotel room with someone else." He shook his head violently, pacing like a cornered animal. "It wasn't like that. It wasn't. I was drunk. I don't even remember half of it." I stepped closer, my voice low, steady, slicing through his excuses. "You remembered enough to tell her not to ask your name. You remembered enough to kiss her, laugh with her, take her to your room. That wasn't confusion. That was choice." He froze mid-step, chest rising too fast, eyes darting around the room like he was searching for an exit that didn't exist anymore. "I made a mistake," he whispered hoarsely. "One mistake. Does that mean everything we had doesn't matter? Does that mean you throw away our future?" I stared at him, really stared at the man I once thought I'd grow old with, now cracking open in front of me. "It wasn't one mistake," I said softly, almost sadly. "It was every lie you told afterward. Every time you touched me, knowing what you'd done. Every time you looked me in the eyes and pretended to love me while hiding the truth." He stepped closer, reaching for my hands with trembling fingers. "But I do love you," he whispered, voice breaking into something raw. "I swear. I swear on everything. I love you. I didn't want to lose you." I pulled my hands away. "You lost me when you chose her." His face crumpled like he'd been punched. "I swear it didn't mean anything." "Exactly." I cut in. "It meant nothing to you, but it meant everything to me. My trust, my dignity, my future. You threw all of it away for something that meant nothing." He collapsed onto the couch, shoulders caving, head in his hands. "I didn't think you'd find out," he admitted in a whisper so soft it barely existed. That line hit harder than the videos, harder than the messages, harder than every lie he'd told. Because it was the truth underneath everything. He wasn't sorry he cheated. He was sorry he got caught. He wasn't grieving our relationship. He was grieving the consequences. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. The resort noise outside felt distant, unreal, like the world had paused to watch this final unraveling. He looked up at me, eyes red, voice shaking. "Is there any chance you'll forgive me?" I swallowed, feeling a strange softness bloom in my chest. Not for him, but for me. For the woman who finally saw clearly. "No," I said quietly. "There isn't." He bowed his head, his entire body folding inward. For a second, I felt a shadow of the old ache, the part of me that once loved him, but it didn't linger. It washed through me and left nothing behind. I turned toward the door. My hand hovered over the handle. He whispered behind me, broken and small, "Please don't leave." I didn't look back. "I left a long time ago," I said, and then I walked out. The door shut behind me with a soft, definitive click. Not violent, not dramatic, just final. A closing, a boundary, a line in the sand that he could never cross again. Outside, the world hadn't stopped. Guests whispered. The ocean breathed its endless rhythm. The livestream comments were still exploding somewhere out there. But inside me, something settled, something quiet, powerful, and unshakable. I wasn't his bride anymore. I wasn't his victim. I was done. By the time I stepped back onto the terrace, the wedding venue had transformed into something surreal, a place caught between celebration and catastrophe, like a festival tent after a storm. Guests stood in scattered clusters, whispering behind hands, replaying video clips on their phones, exchanging looks that ranged from sympathetic to shocked to morbidly fascinated. And through it all, I felt myself drifting, not fragile, not shattered, just strangely disconnected, like I was watching someone else's life through a window. Because while the world saw a dramatic, explosive wedding reveal that was already racing across social media, I was living the quiet aftermath inside my chest, a kind of stillness that felt both heavy and hollow. Notifications buzzed relentlessly on my phone. Headlines had already begun circulating within an hour. Bride exposes groom live. During wedding, cheating scandal unfolds in real time. Destination wedding turns into viral breakup. Influencer accounts posted reaction videos. Commentators dissected the ceremony like it was a televised event. Overnight, the live stream replay had reached hundreds of thousands of views. People praised my bravery, calling me a queen, a legend, a feminist icon. They stitched my moment into inspirational edits. They shared quotes of what I said. They turned my heartbreak into something cinematic. But the truth, in private, it didn't feel cinematic at all. It felt like grief wearing a glamorous outfit. That night, after the dust started to settle, I locked myself in my room with the lights off and just sat there, staring at the floor, letting the silence thicken around me. The adrenaline that fueled me through the reveal had drained out, leaving behind a kind of soreness deep in my bones. I wasn't crying, not yet, but the sadness had weight, like a stone lodged under my ribs. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the ache spread in slow, pulsing waves. It wasn't just losing him. It was losing the future I thought we'd built, the version of my life I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. Celine let herself in with her spare key, quietly placing a soft blanket around my shoulders. She didn't speak at first, just sat beside me until the room felt less hollow. It's okay to feel everything all at once, she murmured eventually. You don't have to be strong right now. You already did the hardest part. I nodded, my throat tight, emotion gathering like a slow tide pressing upward. I thought I'd feel relieved, I whispered. But instead, I feel like there's this empty space inside me. Celine rested her head against mine. Of course you do. You lost something. Even if it was toxic, even if he didn't deserve you, you still lost the version of him you loved. Her words cracked something inside me. A soft fracture and tears finally spilled over, quiet and steady. I didn't sob, didn't collapse, didn't crumble. The tears simply flowed, releasing pressure I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And through every shake of my breath, Celine held my hand without loosening her grip. The next few days were strange. Online, people celebrated me like a hero. Thousands of messages poured in, admiration, empathy, confessions of similar betrayals. But offline, I was still processing. My nights felt long, restless, full of moments where I replayed the relationship in my mind, questioning everything. My mornings were quieter, softer. I'd wake up with the ocean breeze drifting through the curtains, reminding me that life hadn't ended. It had simply changed direction. I started attending short therapy sessions offered by the resort, a complimentary service usually meant for couples. The therapist's voice was calm, grounding. You experienced a betrayal and a public climax simultaneously, she said gently. Your mind and heart are trying to catch up to each other. Give them time. I breathed deeply, letting her words settle like warm sand covering something jagged. Slowly, very slowly, a sense of self began stitching itself back together. Not confidence yet, not joy, but something quieter, something like recognition. I would catch my reflection in the mirror, and instead of seeing a humiliated bride, I would see a woman who survived something painful and still stood tall. My eyes looked tired, yes, but they also looked clearer, sharper, awake. One afternoon, I walked alone to the far edge of the resort beach, letting the water lap at my ankles, letting the sun warm my skin. The world could keep replaying my story 1,000 times, but in that moment, it no longer felt like their story. It was mine again. The ocean roared softly, steady and indifferent, and I realized that even though the world saw a viral spectacle, what truly mattered was the quiet part, the healing that no one else got to see. Because behind the millions of views, behind the headlines, behind the applause, I was just a woman standing in the sand, letting her heart learn how to beat differently. 2 days after the live stream, when the world was still buzzing with commentary and reaction videos and think pieces about the wedding that wasn't, I woke up to a message request on my phone. Not from another stranger applauding me, not from a journalist asking for an interview, not from someone sending heart emojis, but from her, the woman in the videos. The woman whose face had been burned into my memory ever since the anonymous source dropped the truth into my life like a grenade. I stared at her profile picture for a long moment, not glamorous, not seductive, just normal. A real person. Then I opened the message. Hi, I'm sorry. I swear I didn't know he was engaged. For a second, all I felt was this weird hollowness. Not anger, not jealousy. Just the strange, flat sensation of something unexpected knocking against my ribs. I tapped her next message. Hands still. He told me he wasn't seeing anyone. He never mentioned a fiancé. If I had known, I would have walked away immediately. I exhaled slowly, letting her words settle. There was no defensiveness in them. No excuses. Just remorse, raw and plain. And for the first time since the wedding day, I felt a ripple of something I hadn't anticipated, a kind of reluctant solidarity. She had been lied to, too. Betrayal doesn't lose its sting just because you're not the only target. She sent screenshots next, messages from him where he flirted, complimented her, told her things he used to tell me. One line punched the air out of my chest. I'm not really tied down. It's complicated. Complicated. That was how he described me. Our home, our plans, our future. Complicated. I messaged her back. Thank you for telling me. This isn't your fault. And the moment I sent it, something loosened inside me, a knot. I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. Because blaming her was easy, but it wasn't true. He was the one who made promises. He was the one who broke them. To my surprise, she asked if we could talk in person. At first, I hesitated. The idea felt too surreal, too tangled. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed closure from every angle. So we agreed to meet in the resort cafe at sunset, an odd choice that felt half like fate and half like a joke at my emotional expense. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the version of her in my mind. Not the blurred figure dancing under neon lights, not the stranger leaning into my fiancé in a hotel hallway. She looked nervous, human. She approached my table with hands clasped, voice soft. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I studied her carefully, and instead of bitterness, what rose in my chest was a quiet curiosity. Who was this woman who unknowingly stepped into the ruins of my relationship? She sat down slowly. "I need you to know I never would have gone near him if I knew. He told me he was single. He acted so sure of it." Her eyes glistened a little. When the live stream blew up, I realized everything he said was a lie. She pulled out her phone, and after your reveal, he tried to contact me. I felt a small, sharp laugh escape my throat. "Of course he did." She nodded, sliding her phone across the table. Messages from him cluttered the screen, apologies, explanations, desperate attempts to salvage some fantasy connection. Ignore what she showed. Things got twisted. "We could talk when this settles down." Every line was soaked in the same pattern: charm, denial, self-preservation. "He's unbelievable," she whispered. "He ruined your wedding and still had the nerve to reach out to me, like he's the victim." I met her eyes, and something clicked. A shared understanding that neither of us wanted, but both of us needed. And in that strange, twisted way, we stopped being enemies. We became two women standing on opposite sides of the same truth. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about him, not really, but about the shock, the hurt, the manipulation we both fell for. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't angry at myself either. The grief was still there, but it wasn't gripping my throat the way it used to. It had softened into something more manageable, something I could breathe around. When we got up to leave, she hesitated, then said, "You're stronger than you know. What you did, I don't think I could have done it." I gave her a small smile, one that felt honest. "You would have, if you had to." And then, in a strange moment that felt almost symbolic, we both blocked his number right there at the table. A synchronized goodbye to a man who didn't deserve either of our stories. As I walked back to my room, the sky streaked orange and pink overhead. I felt a peace I hadn't felt in weeks. Not because the pain was gone, it wasn't, but because it finally felt like I wasn't carrying it alone. Someone else understood every angle of what he had done. Someone else had survived him too. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward reclaiming myself. The resort felt completely different after everything. Not heavier, not darker, just quieter in a way that finally matched what was happening inside me. The chaos had passed, the storm had blown through, and now all that remained was the steady work of rebuilding the parts of myself I hadn't realized were damaged long before his betrayal. The wedding planners kept tiptoeing around me, offering condolences like someone had died. Maybe something had... But for the first time, I didn't feel like the one who needed to be comforted. I felt like someone learning how to exhale again. Canceling the remaining wedding events was easier than I expected. I thought it would hurt making the calls, signing the forms, responding to vendors, but instead it felt like clearing out a haunted house. Each cancellation was a window opened, a breath of clean air replacing something stale. The resort manager even offered a partial refund, apologizing repeatedly for the emotional distress, and I accepted it without guilt. I wasn't mourning the fantasy anymore. I was recognizing that I deserved to walk away without dragging the broken pieces of it behind me. And that's when I made the decision that shocked even me. I kept the honeymoon. Not with him, not in bitterness, but with myself. I called the travel desk and said I'd like to modify the reservation. Just one traveler. The woman on the phone went quiet for a moment, then spoke with this soft, supportive tone that made my chest warm. "Good for you," she whispered. like she understood exactly what kind of courage that decision took. A day later, I boarded the flight alone, and it felt strangely freeing. No expectations, no pretending, no performance. The destination was breathtaking. White sand, turquoise water that looked unreal, palm trees swaying like they were dancing in slow motion. When I stepped into the villa, sunlight spilling across the room, I felt something shift in my chest. A lightness, a quiet opening. I dropped my bags, stood on the balcony, and for the first time since the wedding reveal, I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply, letting the ocean air fill the places where betrayal had lived. I spent my days doing nothing that required a mask. I wrote in a journal pages and pages of unfiltered truth, scribbling out everything I had never said aloud. I swam in warm water until my muscles softened. I let strangers remain strangers, letting them see only the version of me I chose to show, not the one shaped by someone else's lies. I read books on the beach, letting my toes sink into the sand. I took long walks at sunset where the sky looked like it was on fire and the world felt bigger than my heartache. And slowly, something inside me began to reconnect. Not to him, not to the broken future we almost had. To me, the me I'd put aside to make space for his ego, his apologies, his empty promises. The me who learned how to be small so he could feel big. The me who mistook endurance for love. One night, I sat on the shoreline with waves touching my ankles, letting the foam slide over my skin. The sky was streaked with gold and violet, and the horizon looked endless. I dug my fingers into the sand and whispered to myself, not as a declaration, but as a realization, I'm free. And saying it didn't just feel true, it felt earned. I met people too. Not romantically, God, no, but gently. Warm, easy conversations with travelers who didn't know my story. I laughed with a group of tourists over a terrible karaoke performance. I shared drinks with a woman celebrating her retirement. I chatted with a couple who'd been married for 30 years and still teased each other like teenagers. And with every small interaction, every shared smile, every reminder that the world held more than betrayal and broken vows, the heaviness inside me thinned a little more. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in the window, sun-kissed skin, hair curled from the ocean breeze, eyes clearer than I'd seen them in months. The woman looking back at me wasn't a broken bride. She wasn't a victim of a viral scandal. She wasn't the shadow of someone else's choices. She was someone who had walked through fire and somehow come out lighter. As the trip neared its end, I realized something important. Healing wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single moment of triumph. It was this quiet mornings, honest thoughts, new air filling my lungs. It was giving myself permission to not carry the weight of someone else's betrayal anymore. On my last night, I stood on the balcony watching the moon ripple across the water, and I felt this deep, certain truth settle into me. I hadn't just reclaimed my future. I had rewritten it, and it finally belonged to me. The day I returned home, everything felt strangely familiar yet distant, like walking into a version of my life that no longer fit me. The apartment we once shared looked smaller, quieter, stripped of the illusions that used to make it feel warm. I let my suitcase drop onto the floor and stood there for a moment, just breathing in the stillness. It didn't hurt the way I expected it to. It didn't sting or suffocate me. Instead, it felt like stepping into a space that no longer had power over me, a museum of what once was, nothing more. I spent the first few hours unpacking, clearing out the remnants he left behind, his jacket on the hook, his cologne on the dresser, his half-read book on the nightstand. I placed each item in a box without shaking hands, without tears, without hesitation. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need any of it anymore. When the box was full, I taped it shut, wrote his name across the top, and left it by the door. A simple line drawn between the past and the present. Then, sometime after sunset, my phone buzzed. A long, unfamiliar email notification, but the sender wasn't unfamiliar at all. It was him, my ex-fiancé. The subject line was just one word, please. For a moment, I hovered my finger over the screen, wondering if I should open it. Part of me considered deleting it without reading a small, symbolic act. But another part knew I needed to see what he thought he could still say. So I tapped it open and watched an entire confession unfold in paragraphs. He apologized profusely, repeatedly, painfully. He wrote about the shame, the humiliation, the public fallout. He wrote about losing his friends' respect, his family's trust, his job almost firing him because of the viral attention. He wrote about how he replayed the cheating videos over and over, claiming he no longer recognized the man in them. He wrote about how he loved me, how he threw away the best thing in his life, how he wished he could undo everything. He wrote and wrote and wrote. And as I read it, I felt nothing. Not vindication, not sadness, not longing, just a quiet understanding that this was his closure, not mine. When I finished, I sat with it for a while, letting the glow of the screen illuminate the room. The old version of me might have cried reading it, might have felt the pull of nostalgia, of what ifs, of the comfort, of familiarity. But the woman who had stood on a beach alone, who had walked away from lies, who had rebuilt herself from broken vows, she wasn't swayed. Still, I opened a new email draft. My fingers hovered over the keys before I typed, "Thank you for your apology. I hope you grow from this." I stared at the sentence, 12 simple words, and realized they were true. I wished him growth. I wished him clarity. I wished him accountability. But I didn't wish him back. After reading the line again, something inside me tugged, and I hit delete. Not backspace. Delete. The entire message vanished, leaving a blank screen. Because closure didn't come from sending replies. Closure came from knowing I didn't owe him one. I closed my laptop and stepped out onto the balcony to breathe in the night air. The city lights flickered below, carrying on with their lives, indifferent to my story, and I loved that. I wasn't the center of a scandal anymore. I wasn't a trending topic. I was just a woman standing under the evening sky, letting the future unfold without fear. Later, I posted a final message online, not to drag him again, not to reopen wounds, but to thank the people who had supported me, who had watched the live stream and sent kindness instead of cruelty. I wrote, "This chapter of my life is closed." I learned more about strength in 1 week than I did in years. Thank you for walking with me through the storm. I'm choosing peace now. And the comments were different this time, softer, calmer, full of hope instead of outrage. When I finally lay down in bed, the silence felt peaceful rather than empty. My heart felt whole in a way it hadn't in a long time. I didn't fall asleep thinking about him. I didn't fall asleep thinking about the wedding that never happened. I fell asleep thinking about what comes next, the life waiting for me, untainted, unwritten, mine. The story didn't end with him, it began with me. And this time, I'm the one choosing the narrative.